So, talking today with Peter Hiosan. Peter's a trainer and assessor and has recently been working in Bahrain on vocational education training project there. But before we get into Bahrain, Peter, could you just tell us a bit about your experience in teaching and assessing?
Okay, well I was an electrician. I came out of school not knowing what to do, so I became an electrician for a while, for quite a long while, and then in the early 90s I went back to university to actually become a primary school teacher. And did that for a little while, and then fell into TAFE training because when I combined both the teaching and the electrical experience, that's where I ended up. So I've been actually training within the training field, both in private and public RTO, since the mid-90s.
Tell us, from your experience in Bahrain, there must have been a lot of memorable stories to tell about that. Could you just tell us something about that?
I think some of the greatest things in Bahrain was the linkage between the different schools and the different teachers. You had, with Sheikh Khalifa being the primary school, the one that started it all, and then as we were bringing new schools in, it was actually very good to link the teachers from the new schools with some of the teachers who had already gone through the first year or the second year of the training program. So therefore it actually gave these new teachers who are coming into the program, going from the unified into the competency-based, a really good anchor of what to do. And it was that linkage as part through what Margaret was doing with her teacher training and what we were doing with our one-on-one training out in the schools. It just gave that extra linkage for them. So they could go to one of their peers and ask them what materials you have, how did you solve this problem, how did you solve the problem with having to do so much more practical or whatever it was. And that was, I think, was a vital thing for the teachers coming through that really assisted the project to actually move forward and become the success that it actually was. Because at the year we finished, the third years who finished that course, while they were handpicked to go through from Sheikh Khalifa, every year 5 students, male and female, across Bahrain are given scholarships to go to university wherever they want, full scholarship. And 3 of the 5 from of that year were from our traineeship through our course. So it showed that what we were doing not only met the academic side, it also met the skills side. So it's a good mixture between the two.
We should explain Bahrain is in the Gulf,
yes.
Persian Gulf.
Yes, it's in some ways it's a very rich country, but in other ways it's quite a poor country. Actually, it's not like Qatar or Abu Dhabi and places like that where the population is very small, or the local indigenous population is very small, and therefore they are given dividends from the government. Like Qatar, for example, they're given a place to build their house, they're given money, they're given, not like the dole, but actually given money every week for that. They're given electricity is free, water is free, petrol is very, very cheap. So the cost of living is very cheap for them. Bahrain is slightly different because of the difference between the Shia and the Sunni Muslims. So you have the two different juxtaposed positions there. So you actually have some very wealthy Bahrainis, but you also have some very poor ones, which is quite a novel thing for the Gulf region. But you also have within that, a lot of the teachers are also, where if you go to Qatar, you'll find that most of the teachers are from Egypt, Pakistan, India, Philippines and places like that, or even the Western countries. In Bahrain, you actually had Bahraini teachers who were teaching, and that was, from my experience, quite a novel experience trying to get through, that you had all the expats coming through, as well as locals, all doing the training, and actually all training these students.
And your role was training the teachers?
My role was training the teachers to actually help them to move to a more practical base, because what it was, they were doing 4 hours theory, 4 hours practical. So by the time the kids, and it was 4 hours theory in the morning, 4 hours practical in the afternoon, because you couldn't do it the other way around, because they'd be falling asleep in the theory rooms in the afternoon anyway. But in the morning they were falling asleep. So by the time they got to doing something interesting in the practical side, they were bored. So they were switched off. So they'd done their 4 periods theory, they'd switched off, they were uninterested, they were noisy, they were hard to control, and they really were a problem for a lot of these teachers. And they were supposed to be taught in English in a lot of the places. So you get Filipinos who are, the kids chattering in Arabic, and they're going, English please, and they're trying to talk in English, and with the accents and things like that, it got very difficult for the students. With what we did, by moving it to a more integrated base, so the theory and practical were interwoven a lot closer, So it wasn't just going from one to another. They'd be doing a little bit of prac, then it'd pause, stop, do some theory, sort out the theory on that aspect, then go back into the practical side again. It actually made it a lot more relevant. And for me, I think the one of the best proofs of this, I was sitting in the class in a workshop, and on one side of the workshop were our students, on the other side of the workshop were the ones that were still going down the unified track, because it was still being an experimental project. We still had 2 different tracks at that time. The ones in the unified, there were guys asleep, they were chatting, they were off task, they were uninterested. Our guys, they were talking, but they were working. Every single one of them was working. When they were called back by the teacher, they were quite happy to stop, come back, deal with it, do the theory part of it, point out that bit, and then go back in and doing the work that they need to do. And the difference was just amazing. And it really was an amazing experience in that respect.
And